He flew across the Atlantic to lecture us. That's what just happened. The King of England, Charles III, stood in front of the United States Congress on Tuesday and delivered what every major outlet is now openly calling a 28-minute warning shot at the Trump administration. The Washington Post called it a careful warning. Foreign Policy magazine called it a fierce, pointed speech full of thinly veiled messages. Bloomberg said it was remarkably pointed for a monarch. Translation: a foreign king came to our capital and tried to publicly correct the President of the United States in front of the entire world. Did he really think this was going to work? Did anyone in Buckingham Palace actually look at the last 10 years of American politics and say, you know what'll really land with the American people? A monarch. Lecturing them about democracy. Are you kidding me? Let me back up, because what just happened is bigger than one speech. This is about a coordinated attempt by the global establishment to use one of the most respected ceremonial figures on earth to do what the media couldn't, what the lawsuits couldn't, what even an assassin 3 nights ago couldn't. Pressure Donald Trump into bending the knee, and it's not going to work. Because here's what they don't understand about Donald Trump, and frankly about the country that elected him. We don't take orders from kings. We never have. So let's talk about what Charles actually said, because the media is being very careful to call it diplomatic and measured. It wasn't diplomatic, it wasn't measured. It was a hit piece dressed up in royal robes. Charles stood in that chamber and praised, and I quote, checks on executive power. He praised an independent judiciary. He warned Americans against becoming, his words, ever more inward-looking. He demanded continued American support for Ukraine. He praised NATO. He talked about, get this, the disastrously melting ice caps of the Arctic. He even quoted Oscar Wilde. Now, if you don't know what's happening in American politics right now, that might just sound like a nice speech, but every single one of those lines was a coded shot at the Trump administration. And the foreign press is openly admitting it. Foreign Policy magazine literally walked through them line by line. Checks on executive power? That's an attack on Trump expanding presidential authority. Independent judiciary? That's an attack on Trump criticizing rogue judges. Inward looking? That's an attack on America first. Ukraine? That's an attack on Trump trying to actually end a war. NATO? That's an attack on Trump asking why we're paying for everyone else's defense. The melting ice caps? That's an attack on Trump's energy policy. The Washington Post said the quiet part out loud. They wrote that Charles promoted, and I'm quoting them now, common interests, including in areas where President Donald Trump has sought a sharp break from U.S. tradition. That's a polite way of saying the king of a foreign country came here to undermine our president on his own home turf. And the Democrats? Oh, they loved it. Reporters in the chamber noted that Democratic leaders could be seen standing and applauding when Charles brought up checks and balances. They were giddy. They thought they finally had someone with enough prestige to put Trump in his place. Hakeem Jeffries was clapping. Chuck Schumer was clapping. They imported a king to do what they couldn't do at the ballot box. Think about the absolute desperation of that for a second. But here's the thing. Here's what they don't understand. Here's the part that's going to keep them awake tonight when they realize what they actually did. This country was founded on rejecting exactly this. The very first political document that matters in American history is the Declaration of Independence, and it is one long list of grievances against a king of England who thought he could tell Americans how to live. We fought a war to stop taking lectures from British monarchs. And now in 2026, the Democratic Party's brilliant strategy is to import another one to scold us. Do they hear themselves? And let me tell you what the American people saw. They didn't see a wise elder statesman. They saw a foreign monarch standing in our Capitol building lecturing the country that bailed Britain out of 2 world wars. They saw a king from a country whose own democracy is so robust, they still have a hereditary head of state telling us about democratic values. They saw the leader of a nation where you can be arrested for posting the wrong thing on Facebook, telling Americans about free societies. The disconnect is staggering, and the base sees it. Now, I know some of you are going to say, hold on, isn't Trump the one who hosted him? Didn't Trump roll out the red carpet? Didn't Trump welcome him to the White House for a state dinner? And yes, that's true. Trump greeted Charles warmly. Trump has openly said he admires the British monarchy. Trump treated him with the dignity of a head of state. And you know what? That's exactly what makes this whole episode so revealing. Trump showed Charles every courtesy, hosted him at the White House, gave him a state banquet, treated him like the ceremonial figure he is. And Charles repaid that hospitality by walking up to Capitol Hill and trying to slide a knife between the ribs of the man who just hosted him. That tells you everything. About Charles, about the establishment that briefed him, about the entire apparatus that thought this was a good idea. Trump is the gracious host. Charles is the guest who came to the dinner party to insult the host's politics in front of all his enemies. And here's the part the media won't tell you. Charles didn't write that speech alone. Speeches at this level go through enormous diplomatic preparation. They're vetted by foreign offices, by ambassadors, by diplomats on both sides. The British ambassador to the United States, the Foreign Office in London, royal advisors, all of them signed off on every line. This wasn't an accident. This was a coordinated message from the British government and the global establishment they answer to. Even Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna, a guy I don't usually quote favorably, came out and complained about the speech. He said the British ambassador had personally told him Charles would address the Epstein survivors, and then Charles didn't. Khanna said, his words, "It shows a lack of introspection and accountability." When the progressive Democrats are mad at the King of England, you know something went sideways behind the scenes. So what we're really watching is the global establishment recognizing they're losing. They've tried everything. They've tried 700 plus lawsuits. They've tried impeachments. They've tried indictments. They tried a literal assassin 3 nights ago at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. The shooter, a Caltech-educated leftist named Cole Thomas Allen, left a manifesto calling himself the friendly federal assassin and listing Trump administration officials as targets from highest ranking to lowest. 3 days later, the king is doing his speech. You think that timing is a coincidence? You think Charles's team didn't know exactly what week they were walking into? The establishment is throwing everything at Trump in coordinated waves. The lawfare wave, the media wave, the violence wave, and now the soft power wave, the king himself. And every single one of these waves keeps crashing on the same rock. Because Trump doesn't care. He doesn't care what the Washington Post writes. He doesn't care what Foreign Policy magazine analyzes. He doesn't care what Hakeem Jeffries claps for. And he certainly doesn't care what an unelected hereditary monarch from a country we kicked out 250 years ago thinks about American executive power. He's going to keep going. He's going to keep doing tariffs. He's going to keep restoring presidential authority over the agencies. He's going to keep his America First foreign policy. He's going to keep finishing the war with Iran on his terms. He's going to keep deporting illegal immigrants. He's going to keep prosecuting the people who weaponized our justice system against him. And every speech from every foreign dignitary trying to scold him is just going to make his base love him more. Because here's what Charles fundamentally got wrong, and what the entire global establishment keeps getting wrong. They think Americans want to be respectable in their eyes. They think Americans care what European elites think of us. They think we feel small when a king lectures us. We don't. We feel insulted. We feel patronized. And then we get angry. Every Trump voter who watched that speech saw exactly what was happening. They saw a foreign monarch carrying water for the same Democratic Party that just spent 4 years trying to throw Trump in prison. They saw the same Hakeem Jeffries who's threatening Florida over redistricting, standing up and clapping for British scolding of an American president. And they're going to remember. They're going to remember in November They're going to remember in 2028. They're going to remember every single time the establishment tries to import foreign legitimacy to do what they can't do at the ballot box. This is going to backfire so badly, mark my words. Charles thought he could come here, deliver a polished 28-minute lecture, fly back to London, and watch Trump squirm. Instead, what he did was hand Trump the perfect campaign clip. Imagine the rallies. Imagine Trump at a Pennsylvania rally going, "The King of England came over here to tell you how to vote, and they want me to listen to him? Folks, we fought a war about this." The crowd will go absolutely wild. That's the gift Charles just gave Donald Trump. A perfect, made-for-television contrast. Trump, the gracious host. Charles, the foreign lecturer. The Democrats, gleefully clapping for a king. The American voter, watching it all and remembering exactly why they elected an outsider to begin with. The British think they did something clever today. The American establishment thinks they finally found a messenger Trump couldn't dismiss. They're wrong. They're so wrong it's actually breathtaking. Because the only thing that unites this country faster than Democrats overreaching at home is foreigners overreaching from abroad. And Charles just did both at the same time. He came as a foreign dignitary, and he aligned himself with the domestic opposition. He just made Donald Trump's case for him. So buckle up. Because Trump is going to use this. He's going to use it at rallies. He's going to use it on Truth Social. He's going to use it in interviews. Every single time the establishment says he's an authoritarian, he's going to point to that speech and say, "The people calling me an authoritarian just imported an actual king to lecture you. Who's the authoritarian now? They have no idea what they just unleashed." They thought they were sending a message. Instead, they handed Trump his next campaign ad. And it's going to be glorious.